It was supposed to be just another quiet afternoon at the mansion. The billionaire, known for his strict routines and high standards, had just returned home from a business meeting. But as he stepped out of his car and walked toward the back patio, he froze. There, on the lawn, was his black driver smiling, spinning gently, and dancing with his paralyzed daughter. The girl who hadn't walked or moved her legs in over 5 years, she was laughing genuinely. Freely, her wheelchair swaying with the rhythm, as if the weight of her condition had lifted. For a split second, the billionaire didn't know what to think. This wasn't part of any scheduled therapy, and this certainly wasn't something he had paid for. But what truly stunned him wasn't just the dance, it was the look on his daughter's face. A light he hadn't seen in years. He stood there silently, watching a moment unfold that felt so personal, so human, it shattered every wall he'd built around his heart. Who was this man really? Just a driver? Or someone with a deeper story? A reason for being exactly where he was? At that exact moment, as he stepped forward, the driver noticed him, paused, unsure of what would come next. And that's when something happened that no one could have predicted. Something that would change all of their lives forever. The driver stepped back, his hands gently releasing the girls as he turned toward her father. For a brief moment, silence hung heavy in the air. The billionaire's expression was unreadable, his eyes locked onto the driver, then drifted back to his daughter, who still wore a wide, unguarded smile. She hadn't smiled like that in years, not since the accident, not since the wheelchair became part of her life. The staff always treated her with care, but also with distance. Therapists came and went, offering routine and recovery plans. None of them ever brought out this side of her. But this driver, he wasn't hired for anything other than transportation. So how did he manage to connect with her like this? The billionaire, a man who built empires by controlling every detail, suddenly felt something out of his control. He cleared his throat. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice firm but not angry. The driver's posture straightened. "She asked if I'd play her favorite song. I didn't think it would hurt. She just wanted to feel normal." The billionaire glanced at his daughter again. She nodded, her eyes pleading but filled with joy. His mind raced. Who was this man, who could reach his daughter in ways no one else had? And why did something about him seem oddly familiar? The moment was thick with questions. The silence didn't last long, because the next thing that happened made him question everything he thought he knew. The billionaire didn't say another word. He simply turned and walked inside, leaving the driver and his daughter standing in awkward silence. The girl looked down, her earlier joy dimming. The driver gently wheeled her back toward the house, unsure if he'd crossed a line he shouldn't have. Later that evening, the billionaire sat alone in his study, watching the security footage again and again. Not just today's but clips from the past week. Each time, he noticed how often the driver had paused to speak with his daughter in the garden, how her eyes lit up only when he was near. He hadn't paid attention before. Now it was all he could see. He reached for a folder on his desk. His assistant had quietly handed him the week the driver was hired. Background checks, references, clean, almost too clean. Something didn't sit right. Meanwhile, in the guest quarters above the garage, the driver sat on the edge of his bed, staring at a photo on his phone. It showed a younger girl, laughing, free-spirited, much like the billionaire's daughter. The resemblance was haunting. He tucked the phone away quickly when he heard footsteps outside. At dinner, the billionaire tried to keep conversation light, but his daughter wouldn't stop smiling as she talked about how fun dancing felt, and how he reminded her what happiness felt like. The words hit him hard. He forced a smile, but inside, suspicion was growing. Who exactly was this man, and what was he really doing here? The next morning, the billionaire made a call to his private investigator. He didn't explain much, just gave the driver's full name and said, "I need everything. No gaps." Then he hung up and stared out the window, watching the garden where his daughter now waited daily, hoping for another moment of joy. Saw her looking toward the garage, hoping the driver would appear. Downstairs, the driver hesitated before starting the car for his morning duties. He'd sensed a shift. The look in the billionaire's eyes yesterday wasn't just confusion, was the look of a man putting pieces together. And the driver knew that once those pieces aligned, everything would change. Later that day, the investigator called back. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "The man you hired, he's not just some driver. Years ago, he was a rising dancer, toured globally. Then something happened. Vanished off the grid. There's a connection to a case involving your daughter's old therapist. Nothing criminal, but strange. Real strange." The billionaire's grip tightened around the phone. Memories he had buried began surfacing. He remembered a lawsuit, a dancer involved in a wellness program, a complaint that was quietly dismissed. Could it really be the same person? That evening, he walked into the garden just as the driver spun his daughter around in her chair, both laughing like they had known each other for years. He didn't interrupt, he just stood there, watching. His heart pounded as everything suddenly made sense, yet nothing felt clear. And then, the driver turned and saw him. Their eyes locked. Neither of them said a word. The silence between them stretched as the sun dipped behind the trees. The driver gently let go of the wheelchair and slowly stepped toward the billionaire. "I suppose you found out," he said quietly. his voice steady but tired. The billionaire didn't nod, didn't blink. You were involved in her therapy years ago, weren't you? The driver gave a slight nod. She wasn't my patient, but I was there. I saw what they were doing, and I tried to stop it. The billionaire's face darkened. The old lawsuit, the complaints about unorthodox methods his daughter had withdrawn after that period, shutting everyone out. And this man, this former dancer, had disappeared just as fast. But now, he was back, and not by accident. Then came the twist that sent a chill down the billionaire's spine. I didn't apply for this job, the driver confessed. I never sent an application. Your assistant reached out. I only accepted when I realized who you were. The air shifted. The billionaire looked at him, confused and cautious. Why? He asked, his voice cold. The driver hesitated, then answered, because I owe your daughter more than anyone knows. And not because of what happened then, but because of what I failed to do. Before the billionaire could respond, a voice called from behind his daughter. Dad. I remember him, she said softly. He was the only one who tried to help me. The world seemed to tilt. The truth had cracked open, but the full story was still buried. And what came next would change everything. The billionaire turned to his daughter, stunned. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. He was the only one who stayed behind. After the others left, he held my hand when I cried. He told me I wasn't broken. The driver stepped closer, but not too close. I wanted to report what they were doing, but I was scared. They threatened my career, and I walked away, thinking someone else would speak up, but no one did. The billionaire's jaw tightened. Years of guilt, denial, and silence rose to the surface. He had trusted professionals, written checks, signed off on therapies, never once questioned why his daughter's spirit had faded even faster than her mobility. And now, standing before him, was the man he thought was a stranger, but who had once been the only one who truly saw her. A long pause filled the garden, before the billionaire finally said, You should have come to me back then. I tried, the driver replied. Your office never let me through. The weight of the truth hung between them, and just when it felt like the story had come full circle, the daughter spoke again softly, but with a spark in her voice. Dad, I moved my toes yesterday, just a little, but I did. Everything froze. The billionaire's eyes widened. The driver turned slowly toward her. She smiled through tears. I think I'm starting to feel again. The silence broke not with words, but with hope. And none of them saw the nurse nearby, who had quietly recorded it all, ready to share what really healed her with the world. The billionaire knelt beside his daughter, speechless, watching as her fingers gently tapped against the armrest of her chair with excitement. She repeated, I really felt it, for the first time in years. His eyes welled up not out of frustration or regret, but pure gratitude. The driver stood quietly nearby, knowing that healing had begun, not through medicine, but through connection, joy, and something no doctor had prescribed: human warmth. In the weeks that followed, things changed quickly. The video, the nurse, captured quietly, went viral. People were moved not just by a wealthy man's daughter showing signs of recovery, but by the unexpected bond between a billionaire's family and a humble driver. Headlines used keywords like miraculous recovery, paralyzed daughter dances, and black driver inspires hope. But for the people involved, it wasn't about viral fame, it was about rediscovering what they had lost. The driver was no longer just a name on the payroll. He was invited to stay, not as staff, but as part of the family's new circle of trust. The billionaire reopened the case that had been buried years ago.